Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Hawkeye Episode 6. For me, this episode is to be called Is This Christmas? And I would turn around and I would call this episode Disney Can Waste Money All Day. Disney, can you sponsor me so, you can just keep just burning money? I'm being honest about this episode. I'm being honest about the show. How there's a jam-packed amount of stuff that they did nothing with in this episode. There are so many things to be like, hey, let's give us the Kingpin episode, and they didn't give us that. They just gave us a character that is just kind of here and there, and then the way of which that this character is to be ending upon this episode. I'm like, God, this is so weak. Everything is to be weak. Everything is to, of course, tell us that Echo is to get a spin-off of sorts. And so, of course, she's not going to get killed off here. That's obvious. We have, of course, the Hawkeye Belova scene that is supposed to give both of these characters closure. Robert Loggia. They're supposed to get closure over Natasha, and really we just have Hawkeye, who couldn't be bothered to actually tell Belova how her sister actually died. Still. So we just have them whining and crying, and it's just this episode. It ends kind of how you also expect it to end, because everything about this is technically predictable, where this was just a show that went absolutely nowhere, and it felt like the most waste of time that I could have ever... this is the worst Marvel show I've ever seen. The only thing that we end up getting that is a consolation prize out of this episode is to see both Kate and Hawkeye's new outfits. That's the only thing that you're really getting out of this episode of oh, wow, those are cool get-ups, as they are to make a joke about it towards the end of this episode. So yeah, just very weak turnout for a expected weak turnout, just because this show is the worst Disney Plus show out there. Everybody should go ahead and not go and buy a subscription purposely for this Hawkeye show. They should go on to bootleg it. Go on and wait for some other app to dare in fact have you given the ability to watch this for free. I would have people go back and watch Daredevil instead. Daredevil is such a better payout show than this one is. It's kind of hilarious how the Netflix shows are freaking heads and tails way better than any of these Disney Plus things, to the point of them having Disney now push all these Netflix characters onto these things now. Because, hey guys, remember when this thing was a better thing than what we have now? Well, let's keep bringing these to the forefront because they are technically better. So, because, why would you expect an Avengers level, film or an Endgame kind of thing for a show? So, let's go on to that double 5 time territory. Let's just go into that. Otherwise, time to say that it is spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode. For me, I have to say that I'm kind of forced into watching these shows because I feel like it'll have some MCU connection into the distance. Hence why you have WandaVision that is technically having an MCU connection. You're gonna possibly have Loki maybe have some connection to his show in Love and Thunder, possibly. And of course, you're probably gonna have Falcon and Winter Soldier having some connection to something else somewhere down the road. This show, I could say that there's probably not going to be a connection to anything, or if there really is a connection, they'll just have to give us this quick little thing about it that's like, oh yeah, I was going and doing this, and they're like, oh okay, and then it'll be kind of swept under the rug, and then just be put right back into the MCU with all of these characters. So yeah, like this episode tells us nowhere where any of these characters are heading, and so I could just be like, well, of course, because of course. So let's get into it. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time. So let's go into spoilers. So we of course had the cliffhanger thing where we have, of course, Kingpin and Eleanor, who are to have been said are kind of in cahoots with one another. And they go on and they extend that whole scene through a video so that way both Kate and Hawkeye know what's going on with both Kingpin and Eleanor. Because Belova was to go on and have this video be taken of these two having this conversation. So it seems that Eleanor was to have her husband owe Kingpin so much big, fat, succulent money that Eleanor had to forcibly be in cahoots with Kingpin, which led to her trying to come up with some way to pay Kingpin off. And so Eleanor wants out from Kingpin. She feels like she has fulfilled her quota to Kingpin, and now she wants out. And so after Eleanor is to leave, the Kingpin is just like, I think that we should go and kill Eleanor, because nobody quits the Kingpin. Like, there's obviously a whole entire movies, shows, and whatever that tell you that, like, nobody retires from the Kingpin. The only way they retire is in some body bag somewhere, or some other way of death where they end up having a rose being tossed into their body. But I don't think they actually do that in the show that technically this Kingpin is tied into. We also, for this Kingpin, are kind of going back to the Spider-Man 90s way of this Kingpin to look, where he's wearing this like white blazer and he's wearing these weird goofy shirts. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that's not that's not like Daredevil's Kingpin. They're just going and having this Kingpin like wearing these freaking goofy clothes that is to look like 90s Kingpin. Like, I was just expecting for him to have like this white blazer and black vest and like purple boa or tie or something to make it look like he's legitimately 90s Kingpin from the animated Spider-Man series, because that's what it looks like they're trying to do here. And I'm like, this does not look like Daredevil's Kingpin. They're trying to do something different here. And I thought it was cheap. Like, they couldn't figure out what he was supposed to look like here, and they didn't want to put an effort in for one episode, so they just was like, here you go. Here's this, weirdly. Because we don't know what to do with you. So we go on, and we also have, in the last episode, Hawkeye was going and kind of burrowing it into Echo that uh, that Kingpin had wanted Echo's father dead. And so Echo is now going on and talking to her brother about, like, hey, where were you that night that our father died? And then all of a sudden, we end up having that argument coming ahead with Echo because she has jack-crap nothing to do with Hawkeye, really. That she is just going to have to forcibly be on her own mission through this episode to confront her brother and finally have it out here, to where eventually Echo is to go on and kill her brother. And I'm like, oh no, like, this girl has nothing to do in this episode, so she's just left to just do this. Okay, so the consolation prize of certain characters, because Echo is going to Kingpin, and Kingpin is like, Maya, I love you, and like, and we're gonna work together here. And Echo is just going like, you know what, like, I just need some time away. uh like, she does say that she loves the Kingpin, but she also, like, needs some time to herself. And then Kingpin is like, what's up with this? Like, I have Eleanor who's leaving me, I have Echo who's leaving me, like, all these people are leaving me now. And so Kazi is just telling, or Kingpin is telling Kazi, it's like, hey, you're gonna have to go and take care of that. And take care of Hawkeye, because, like, this Avenger is putting so many wrenches in my business. So, like, we're gonna have to go and kill this guy off. So Kate is to go on and confront her mother about what is going on, and both Kate and Hawkeye are going to this formal party. And so the cool thing that I do like about here to keep these LARPer people employed is to basically just have them all be the waiters in this place. I'm like, okay, like, you know what? That actually was a smart thing, to just keep these people on the show, and to figure out how to, like, use them as these, like, crowd control, like, people. I actually thought that that was a good idea, but I thought it was going to, of course, be inevitable anyways, just because these characters have technically been through a lot of the show regardless anyway, so I was thinking that they were going to incorporate them somehow. Because once we have the tracksuit mafia coming in here and eventually uh, coming in here to take down Hawkeye and Kate, or no, wait, really just Hawkeye, because Kate is kind of dealing with Belova, we end up also having Kazi, who is to be this sniper on this roof trying to kill Hawkeye. So Kingpin really has nothing really to do with anything in this episode. He's not coming in to be this big threat that's gonna go and take down Hawkeye himself. No, like, we just have, like, Kingpin just show up at the end, talking to Echo, and I'm like, wow, this is such a waste for this character to come in to really just do nothing. And I was like, man, they probably spent a whole lot of money to have this guy come back here to be the Kingpin. For what? For what, I ask you? It honestly would have been better off if Kingpin would have been used somewhere else. Maybe a place where there's no way home. Maybe. It would have made a lot of sense at the real tail end of that. It could have been better. It could have been a heck of a lot better. It would have made a lot of sense for what's going on in No Way Home. But F it, like, it's whatever at this gosh darn point. Wasted at bat, so to speak. So Hawkeye is to also come up with these trick arrows because he, like, from the one episode before, he is to mention that he just has those arrowheads, but he doesn't have the actual rest of the arrow part. And so now, before Kate and Hawkeye go to this party, they have to go and make these arrowhead arrows. And Kate is having to have all of her arrows labeled so that way she'll know what they all are. You would think with just the tip of the arrow, she could probably tell what they are, but I would guess naturally assume that I would be wrong about that. So yeah, so we go to this party, and it seems that we have both Hawkeye and Kate's outfits that are just kind of being these tearaway outfits that are to have their actual superhero suits underneath. So it's kind of like a Spider-Man, Superman kind of approach to this, which I kind of find is kind of cool, even though it's like, yeah, really, they like teared away those actual suits in the. They actually tore away their clothes to showcase their costumes were underneath. I'm sure there was some editing thing where they just kind of stopped the footage at one point to just showcase, like, oh yeah, like actually, like they stopped the footage and then gone on to edit the part where they switched in their costumes, because I don't believe there's a tearaway dress or tux or whatever that all these characters have that is actually have the suit underneath. Yeah, right. So we go on and we have Hawkeye going and having all the LARPer people get these people out of the party. We have one moment who are young Armand, the kid Armand, is talking to Jack, who is technically still his brother, and so they're talking about like a certain exchange of things, and I'm just like, yeah, this is kind of cool that Armand is kind of establishing dominance over Jack. But like, I was like, good point on you, kid, for being this like young but dominant kid over Jack for whatever reason. So, as if like Armand is to be the new king of the castle since his dad is technically dead. So everybody's getting out of this one party. We have Kate confronting Eleanor, and we have Eleanor kind of telling Kate of like this whole story, and that Kate doesn't really understand like what they had to do to get to this point, so on and so forth, blah blah blah. So Kate goes on and is to have Eleanor trying to leave this party because technically they're in danger. Kingpin goes on to try and find Eleanor and try to kill Eleanor. And after Kate is to go on and try to prevent Yelena from trying to kill Hawkeye and try to push all these elevator buttons to stop her from getting to floor 12 to stop Hawkeye, we then have Kate transition to make her way to save her mother and use plenty of these arrows to go on and try to take Kingpin out. And eventually Kate goes on to have her mother arrested, but Kate ends up still having to fight out Kingpin, and the store that they're in ends up having some kind of firework kind of arrow for Kate to use against Kingpin. And so Kingpin is to be like consistently presumed dead in this movie, but I'm assuming, or at the end of this show, but I'm assuming it's a lie. So, because Kingpin meets up with Echo, who has killed her brother, and is to know that it's true that Kingpin had killed Echo's father, and so now Echo is to hold a gun against Kingpin, and Kingpin is like, "What are you doing? It's your family, and how could you do this?" And so Echo goes on and shoots Kingpin, supposedly. But I'm assuming if they want to reuse Kingpin, they can have the ability of having this not be that Kingpin was shot here. Because if honestly they would have wanted to kill the Kingpin, they would have shown him die here. They keep giving us these cliffhanger things like, "Oh, is Kingpin dead? Oh, is Kingpin dead? Oh, he must be dead now." No, he's not dead. Like, believe me, he's not dead. Like, I highly doubt he's gonna be dead. He's gonna show up in the Echo spin-off, or he's gonna show up somewhere else. Uh, I'm sure like everything that was tied to Kingpin is going to be used somewhere else. So yeah, I just don't believe that we're going to get a Kingpin death here because it makes no sense. So to have this character for one whole episode for them to never use him again makes no sense. So we go on here and we have Hawkeye, who of course is to be shot at uh, by Kazi, and that ends him up having to eventually fight off all these tracksuit mafia guys, and eventually using some of his arrows to try and defeat these guys. But then the best part about this whole episode is when Hawkeye is to be forced to jump into this Christmas tree, and he's realizing, God, we're gonna die. So they have Kate need to figure out a way to get Hawkeye down from this Christmas tree. So she ends up hitting the end of the Christmas tree for the tree to just tip over. So I'm like, man, that is a big, massive tree falling down. But the one funny part is when Hawkeye is going through this tree and looking through it and trying to get a clear thing of vision, and all of a sudden he sees this owl in there, and the owl turns like, and then and Hawkeye, like that part was like the best part about the whole episode, because there's nothing good about this episode besides this one goofy part where Hawkeye's in this tree and the owl looks at him, and it's just this funny moment, and there's nothing better than that part of this show. So Hawkeye is now in the skating rink. Kate meets up with him, and so they're basically using every single one of their arrows to take down these tracksuit mafia guys, who we assumed were all taken out, but then tracksuit mafia guys continue to come here. So we have some tracksuit mafia guys in this Creative Bros truck, or whatever, the one Bros truck, and Kate ends up using the Pym arrow to shrink in that truck, and so that was also kind of a funny thing to do there. So they end up also having Hawkeye shoot out this one arrow that is to connect magnetically all of these guns to all these poles, and but all of this is to eventually have Belova go and fight Hawkeye. And so they're ending up fighting, but eventually the main thing that comes out of this is that Belova is to ask how her how her sister died, and Hawkeye's like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And I'm like, wow, that's great. But really, how this fight ends is from a whistle. A rando whistle is to stop this fight between Hawkeye and Belova. And so then Hawkeye is to go on and mention the movie Black Widow to us, where when both Yelena and Natasha were having to fly away from the country because, of course, their dad was actually some Russian spy trying to get the super soldier serum and a number of other things with using these discs. We have Hawkeye re-referencing this part here and how Natasha was scared that she had to alone fly this plane, and that Belova was there and she was also just terrified. And so I guess this moment is to try and resell the Black Widow movie of people that had probably never saw that film, like, what's Hawkeye talking about here? Like, I don't remember any time that Natasha and Belova were on a plane on some show or some movie somewhere. What is he talking about? And it's like, oh, it's the Black Widow movie. Oh, like, I should go and rewatch that for whatever goofy reason, to try and get some last minute buys on whatever was the recent Marvel film that came out besides No Way Home, because this is not a Sony thing. But technically there is a thing here that does technically sell another project, technically, for some people. So, and no spoilers on what that is, but because anyway, I can't say it. But yeah, so going in further, so we just have like Belova having crocodile tears here, and Hawkeye is to also kind of just be like that kind of thing, and I'm like, man, like these, like, at least Renner could be a kind of convincing sad looking person, but like Yelena is just not. Like, it doesn't look convincing enough. But then, so Belova is to just F off after we just have that technically closure moment where Hawkeye was to say how much like Natasha meant to him, because Yelena is to say that he loved, or that she loved her sister, and Hawkeye was like, I loved her too, and that he was trying as much as possible to die for Natasha, but Natasha wouldn't let it. And so, like, Yelena's like, well, you should have tried harder. And you should have tried harder to die, or you wouldn't have to die now. You know what? You know what I would have been happy with them doing, even though some people would say that this is really harsh, and they love Hawkeye, and they don't want me to say this. I honestly would have liked if Yelena would have killed Clint here. I would have liked that. I would have liked for her to still be this vengeful person that doesn't give a crap about the whole whistling thing and how much that... Like, I would have liked for Yelena to still kill Clint here, because what was the point of brooming Kate anyways? What was the point of setting up Kate here to be this Hawkeye for it to just do nothing in the end? I get that Kate probably won't have access to all of Hawkeye's gadgets, as if Hawkeye is going to be getting any more trick arrows after this, and we'll kind of see what is to happen after Hawkeye is to really just run out of all this stuff. What is he gonna just like? How is he going to be? Is he gonna have to figure out a way to manufacture this? Is he gonna go and steal some kind of arrow manufacturer thing? Uh, is that how we're gonna have to do the next thing of this show? Are both Hawkeye and Kate gonna have to come up with some kind of other thing to do here? Are they just gonna stick to regular arrows and not go with trick arrows anymore until there's a big Avengers level event? And then, hey guys, here's the trick arrows again. Are they gonna have if like when really looking at it, Kate is technically a really rich girl, so why wouldn't they just have Kate figure out a way to manufacture these arrows so that way they have an endless supply? That's just my thought process. So they go on and they take down everybody that they are to take down here. Echo has nothing to do with the ending of this story, really. And so after it seems that everyone is taken care of here, and I hope I've covered everything, we also had the LARPer people that got into their gear for whatever reason. Like, I didn't really see them kind of going into the charge and really helping out Hawkeye and Kate. But they were just, like, meant to come in here to look cool and to just, like, waste some more costume budget, I guess. So I can do this all day. Waste money all day. Anyways, so all of this really just ends with both Kate and Hawkeye going on to their Christmas. We end up having Hawkeye, who is to go and take all these presents to bring them in to his family on Christmas Day. And all of a sudden we end up having Hawkeye who's saying, like, hey, are you coming? And I'm like, yeah, of course, Kate is going to go on and be with Hawkeye on Christmas Day. Because Hawkeye was to tell Kate, it's like, well, hey, like, we're partners now, and like anything that is left unresolved, I am going to help you resolve it. And I kind of liked that, where like at first we have Hawkeye who doesn't give a rip about Kate, and it just feels like Clint is just forced to do all of this stuff and is forced to be with Kate, protecting her. But then it kind of turns around, and Hawkeye is actually proud of the person that Kate has become, and Hawkeye sees Kate finally as an equal and not some babysitting duty. So we now have it where Hawkeye's like, well, hey, I just don't want to run off to go and spend Christmas with my family. I want to run off and finish what we started here. And it's not about Clint's reputation anymore, and it's not about him just kind of getting all of these closure moments. So Hawkeye and Kate go off to their Christmas with the Barton family, and so we end up finding out what the heck that watch was for. I thought that the watch would have been a dead ringer for Kingpin. Like, I thought that there would have had some story here about Kingpin going like, yes, my watch, and like, it's my most prized possession. Because I thought that they could have had at the engraving of the watch, it could have actually been tied to Kingpin's wife, and that could have been the last thing that Kingpin's wife had given to him. That could have been the last present that he got from her. And I think that should have been the way that this story was to have gone on, that big, massive closure moment for Hawkeye to get that watch, to realize that Kingpin is to go on and want to fight Hawkeye anyways, and then Hawkeye is to give Kingpin this watch, and then Kingpin goes away because he's like, oh, this is what I wanted, like kind of giving like Kingpin a gift, so that way he is to just be like, well, okay, like this is to matter much more than me than fighting you. Or they could have made it about the watch, but they didn't. But what we end up just seeing here is Hawkeye is to give this watch to Laura, and on the back of the watch it has a shield logo and it says 19 on it. I'm like, what the does this mean? Like, I don't think that this is to be her watch, but it has something to do with her. And I don't think they were probably ever going to get to that. I don't think that that's going to be resolved. Or if it ends up getting resolved, I don't know. Like, I just think that that's going to be something that they're probably going to quickly forget about. Or I guess that's a thing that is to tell everybody, hey guys, we're going to do a season 2 of Hawkeye where we cover that story. Because everybody's going to be irritated about why, unless there is something that did somewhere in the ether of things cover this, and I don't know. I don't think there's anything that covered this. But I guess it did tell us how maybe Hawkeye did get to be with Laura, was that she was possibly a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent or a relative to a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Maybe Laura was to eventually be married to some S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who had died, and that's why Hawkeye had gone on to fall in love with Laura. I don't know. There could be any number of stories that just spurned out of the brain noggin of this whole thing. But I'm trying to justify this whole watch because this show could barely decide to want to do that garbage. So everybody's la-di-da, everybody's Christmas up with all their presents because it's Christmas Day. Laura's telling Clint, it's like, hey, you just made it just in time. And Clint's like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, Kate and her stupid show that we had to do. This garbage that I had to do here. This 6-episode thing that just took forever to do. So we go on, and that's how the show is to just rattle off. And the end credit scene is just the extended version of I Can Do This All Day. The whole play thing. I'm like, I'm just imagining now that after this show is over, they're actually going to put together that play. Like, I'm assuming that Disney's going to blow the money to actually put that play together. And, like, I just don't understand. Like, they could have gone on in the end credit scene to have any closure moment for any of these characters, but they didn't. They could showcase that Kingpin is still alive. They can showcase that Belova is heading with the other like Dark Avengers from the Falcon and Winter Soldier thing. We could have any of numbered of we could have had, man, like we could have had so many cliffhanging things for the end of this. Like, man, like the WandaVision end credit scene for the end of that show was much more rewarding than the possible last episode. And it's just like the end credit, they could have, like, why? why did they waste that time of doing that all day? Uh, Doing that whole play at the end of this, where they just extended it to just like, oh yeah, our city smells, but I can do this all day. Like, did they just have that footage to just waste? So they might as well just like, hey man, we just have this extended scene, so let's just put it out there because we have no real thing to really just end this because they weren't putting effort into any of this show whatsoever, anyways. So why not just reuse footage? So, with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. This show is wrapped up. There isn't any cliffhanging things that are to tell us where anything is going, so this show is meaningless. Uh, just being honest, like, I have to be honest about this show. It's a forced watched thing, and so when you're forced to watch it and you don't get a good payout about it, that's when you can gripe to the heavens about it, because it's just. I would rather be watching any other more productive shows. Uh, but instead, I'm watching this one because I forcibly have to, because you have to watch everything with the MCU. And that's where they've kind of banked on the fact. Like, you can go on and you could go into the Warner Brothers world of things, and they didn't actually put up like a DCEU kind of thing. And even when they are to say it's like, oh, well, there's a DCEU. No, there's not. Like, you can watch any of those movies, and they don't really tie into one another. You can watch Justice League and have never watched any of the other films, and you can easily understand who everyone is and not have this, like, oh, well, I guess I should have watched this film. Like, maybe Wonder Woman, and that's about it. But anything else, you don't really need to put that effort in. Whereas this one, it's like they give us, like, uh, you have to know about what's going on with, like, Doctor Strange and No Way Home, because eventually that will tie into his movie and what he's doing. So, yeah. With that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.